right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for this book launch party to celebrate the launch of Designing and Facilitating Workshops with Intentionality. It's so great to see all of you. And I'm loving that the introductions are coming through in the chat, so please keep those coming. And we're actually going to dive right in with an activity because I want to find out from you all what you think the important characteristics of a workshop are. And so we're going to do an activity called Search and Share, and I will quickly model it and then I'll give you some time to try it out yourself. So in a moment, I will share a link to a Padlet board that looks like this. And I'm going to ask you to find an object in your environment that represents what you consider to be a quality of a good workshop. And then what you'll do is you will click on the plus sign in the bottom right corner of the Padlet board. You'll type the name of the object at the top. And then in the center, you have two different options. So one option is if you click on the camera, it will activate the camera on your device and you can take a picture of your object. Or if you don't want to do that, you can also just do the image search option here and search for the image that you want to use, click to select it, and it will upload it to that specific post. You'll also notice in the bottom left corner, there will be a little Alt button. That's so that you can add a brief description of what the object is. So I might type a cardboard box with an open lid, click Save. And here at the bottom, I would explain how this object represents what I consider to be a quality of a good workshop. And then you'll click on Publish in the top right corner to officially add it to the board. So I'm just going to pause there. Are we good with the directions? Anything I can clarify? Okay, I'm seeing nodding heads. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share the Padlet link in the chat. I'll give you a few minutes and then I'll adjust the time if needed, but I'll pause and give you a second to share what you think the qualities of a good workshop might be. All right, so I'm seeing some great posts here on the board. I'm going to go ahead and put this in slideshow view to make it a little bit easier for us all to follow along with the posts here. And let's see. So we have my pen. This pen is simple and has multiple colors. A good workshop isn't overly complex. It has varied activities and has participants engaged in producing something via thinking, writing, and talking. That's a great metaphor. Candle. Workshops ignite something in us and illuminate something for us. Like a candle, we are ready and made to be lit up, but we need a spark and the right conditions to make it so. As my candle shows, it can be lit many, many times. Love that. And I love what you mentioned about the conditions, right? Because as facilitators, we help to create those conditions that can foster these types of learning experiences. Good workshop gives me stuff to think about. Yes, that thinking face emoji, that's like how I like to feel at the end of a session too. A mask, not literally, although maybe literally, but mask wearing can be a demonstration of care for those you will interact with. And I think that's at the heart of effective facilitation, a deep awareness of how your brain, heart, body affects others and making choices with that in mind. And you're in the health sciences. That works out really well, Lindsay. Thanks for sharing that. Digital timer, this represents the pacing of a workshop. Yes, so each workshop has different sections, which ideally have an estimated time. And we want to give participants a clear time frame, which helps with pacing and engagement. Love that. Ginger. Oh, Ginger is the embodiment of presence. For her, there is no past and there is no future, only now. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Space heater, ensuring a comfortable environment conducive to learning. The brain, it stimulates thinking. Object is sand. Text not working out, no worries. Sand, I see pebbles and sticks of various shapes and sizes. That diversity and individuality of materials coming up together to form a beach feels reflective of a successful workshop. That is beautiful. Rent the musical. A good workshop brings in creativity and maybe a little bit of your personality and what you're passionate about. Yes. Okay, so thank you all so much for sharing these, and I'll be sending an email afterwards with this so that you can check out the post in more detail if you wish. But thank you all so much for sharing your metaphors. And I wanted to start off with that activity because that's basically the goal of my book is to basically try to explore how can we help create these types of workshop experiences where people feel valued and supported and cared for and excited and their thoughts are provoked and all of those great things that we would want to happen in a professional learning experience. And so I'm really excited to be able to share some insights from the book with you all today. All right, so in terms of our agenda, I'm going to be answering three key questions that you might have come in with today. What? So what is the book about? So what? Why might you be interested in it? And then now what? What are some ways that you can support the book moving forward? And between the so what and now what portions, we'll pause for some Q&A time, and then we'll wrap up with some closing information and resources. And along with that, we're going to be doing quite a few giveaways during today's session, so be on the lookout for those. There will be separate entries for each one so that you can enter whichever giveaways you are interested in. But the only rule is that you can only win once. So you can enter as many times, but you can only win once. I want to be able to spread the goodness around. All right, so I recognize a lot of people on the call, but for those that I haven't yet met, greetings. My name is Tolu, and I'll just briefly introduce myself. I've been working in the field of education for a little over 20 years now in various contexts. Currently, I'm an educational developer. My formal title is Instructional Learning Spaces Coordinator at California State University, Long Beach, where I design and facilitate professional learning programs for instructors. Before that, I was a senior professional learning specialist at Apple, helping educators explore how they could use technology to enhance teaching and learning. Before that, I was an associate professor in a teacher education program, teaching future teachers. And before that, I was a K-12 teacher myself. So one thing you should know about me is that I am incredibly passionate about all things related to teaching and facilitation. And so that passion was a huge driving force for why I decided to write this book. Okay, so we're going to transition to a little bit of, oh, yeah, Liz, we got to talk. Yeah, that's been my whole trajectory has been in education, and it's just morphed in terms of who I am partnering with, but it's definitely my passion. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of explaining about what the book is about, so a little bit of a book tour here. As I'm highlighting what the book is about, please feel free to think about what you're already doing in relation to these topics, because we all bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to this work. And my hope is that this book will kind of come alongside you and the work that you're already doing. So I'll provide just a quick overview of what the book is all about, starting with the introduction. So in the introduction, I highlight 3 frameworks that I draw on throughout the book. One of these frameworks is Josh Eiler's How Humans Learn. And in this book, he synthesizes the research on human learning into 5 themes, which are curiosity, sociality, emotion, authenticity, and failure. And so in the book, I explore how can we take those 5 themes and apply them to our design and facilitation of workshops. Another framework that I draw on is Universal Design for Learning, which honors the variability of learners and tries to provide different options for engagement and representation and action and expression. And so that's another framework that I draw on. How can we apply UDL principles to our design and facilitation of workshops? And then the third one that I draw on is the New Learning Compact. So this is a framework for professional learning in higher ed, and it offers principles that apply to your work with individual educators all the way up to engaging broader educational partners. And so these are the 3 frameworks that I draw on. And what's great about these frameworks is that you can use them regardless of the topic of your workshop. So it's more about the guiding principles that will shape how you decide to facilitate your session. The other thing that I do in the introduction is I introduce a model I created called the Workshop Wheel. And this workshop highlights 10 principles for intentional workshop design and facilitation. And each of these principles is the focus of one of the main chapters in the book. So I'll provide a brief overview of what those principles are. The first chapter focuses on the first principle, which is relevant. And by the way, each chapter also starts with a guiding question. So this chapter's guiding question is, how can you use a learner-centered approach to design relevant workshops? And so in this chapter, I draw on elements of design thinking and self-determination theory to explore how we can make more relevant learning experiences. And it answers 5 key questions, which are, who are your learners? Where are they situated? What would a good focal point for the professional learning experience be? What would be an appropriate way to address it? So would a workshop be a good fit, or maybe something else a better fit? And then what conditions might learners find fulfilling? So I don't remember who mentioned this on the Padlet board, but about creating those conditions, right? And so this chapter taps into that specific component. Chapter 2 focuses on the second principle, purposeful. And the guiding question here is, how can you design a purposeful workshop plan? And so this really focuses on the development of a high-level plan. I call it a macro plan in the book, where we're using elements of backwards design and Fink's taxonomy to determine what the workshop should actually address. And so it starts off with looking back at the previous chapter to think about the relevant factors. And then from there, determining what are the circumstances of the workshop, like the modality, how many people you're expecting, et cetera. And then outlining the goals for the workshop, how you'll assess learning, and the activities that participants will do. And then lastly, thinking about the impact. So how are you going to evaluate the impact of the experience? Chapter 3 is all about the third principle, structured, and this is about how you can create a structure, or sorry, how can you structure the workshop to support participants' learning? And so this chapter addresses a few different elements of structure. One is the organization of the workshop. So in the previous chapter, we had that high level plan. In this chapter, we get more into the details and talk about what are some different ways that you can organize a workshop. And then we also discuss the role that timing plays in workshops, things to think about when developing materials, like how can you make them accessible, and then also the role of technology in workshops and how to make decisions about what tools to use, if any, in the session. Chapter 4 focuses on the fourth principle, inclusive. Guiding question here is how can you create an inclusive, welcoming, and equitable learning experience? And in this chapter, we look at lots of different aspects of inclusive facilitation. So I'm not going to put all of them on the screen right now, but I'll highlight just a couple. One of them comes down to our use of inclusive materials and methods. So thinking about the images we're using, the perspectives we're including, things like that. Also thinking about how we can mitigate barriers in advance, how we can design accessible physical and virtual spaces, and also how we can provide participants different options for engagement in the session. Chapter 5 is on the principle of connective, and the guiding question here is how can you foster a sense of belonging, build trust, and promote relationship building in your workshop? And here I highlight 3 different types of connections. The first type is learner to facilitator, where we help learners get to know and trust us. The second type is facilitator to learner, where we get to know our participants. And the third type is learner to learner, where we're providing ways for them to engage with and learn from each other. And this chapter has dozens of practical strategies and activities that you could use to foster these types of connections in workshops. All right, chapter 6 is about the sixth principle, active, and the guiding question here is how will participants actively engage with the workshop topics? And this chapter focuses on different types of active learning activities that you can include in a workshop, such as activities that can help participants activate their prior knowledge, activities that can help participants process the new information they're learning, application activities, and also ways that we can include choice in order to support learners' need for autonomy in our sessions. And then chapter 7 focuses on the principle of reflective. Guiding question, how will participants reflect on their learning and determine appropriate next steps? And this looks at 2 different aspects of reflection, what Priya Parker calls looking inward and turning outward. So looking inward is reflecting on what we learned during that workshop, and then turning outward is thinking about how we're going to apply what we learned moving forward. And then chapter 8 focuses on the principle ongoing, how you help participants continue their learning after the workshop ends. And here we explore different ways to continue learning beyond the scope of the workshop. And I see some love for Priya Parker in the chat. Yes, that's one of the main frameworks, another one that I draw in my book quite a bit. So this chapter explores workshop resources, how you can use post-workshop communication, personalized support, and other methods to extend learning beyond the scope of the workshop. And then chapter 9 is about the ninth principle, responsive. How can you be responsive to participants before, during, and after the workshop? And this chapter also addresses lots of different aspects of responsiveness. So things like doing formative assessments in order to check in with participants about their learning, ways that we can invite participants to ask their questions during sessions, how we can ensure that participants receive feedback about their learning, and also how we can reflect on the learning experience itself so that we can make changes for the future. And then the 10th chapter focuses on the last principle of the workshop wheel, distinctive. And the guiding question here is how will you bring who you are to your workshop design and facilitation approach? And so this one really focuses on the personhood of the facilitator, and we reflect on how your identity, your beliefs, your values, and your experiences shape your approach to workshop design and facilitation, because there's no one right way to do this, and we're all going to have a slightly different flavor, which is what makes this so great. So those are the first 10 chapters, and then there are 3 remaining sections. So chapter 11 offers some practical tips that you can use to enhance your workshop workflow. So this gets really granular, like things to think about in terms of time management, in terms of organization, in terms of design strategies, specific tips for virtual facilitation, etc. Chapter 12 is about how you can continue to grow as a facilitator. And so I offer dozens of practical recommendations for books and podcasts and other resources that you can use to expand your facilitation skills. And then the conclusion wraps up the book on a meaningful note. All right, so I have been talking for a while, and so I want to pause and give you some space. As I mentioned, these are topics that I know we are already doing things in our practice already. And so I would love to create some space for you all to share something that you're already doing that's working really well. This could be a tip, an activity, a resource that's related to one of these topics, and you have a few different options for how you can respond. Option one is in the chat. You can just start your response with the basically a hashtag that represents the part that your comment relates to. So if I was going to share something related to active learning, I would start with active, hashtag active, and then my response. Option two is if you would prefer to share your thought verbally, please feel free to raise your hand and do that. We're just going to keep the responses brief so that we can make sure we can hear from as many perspectives as possible. But I will pause and give you a moment to contribute. What's something that you're already doing that relates to one of these topics and you think would be a helpful tip for other people? All right, starting to see some responses coming in the chat. And once again, if you prefer to share by unmuting, you're welcome to do that too. So Liz says, inclusive. I created a slide for our workshop slide template that prompts the presenter slash facilitator to talk about engagement expectations. Wonderful. So letting people know how many times they're going to speak during the session, that they can opt out. It includes a reminder to recycle lunch boxes and cans and gives explicit permission to stand or walk at the back of the room if sitting isn't comfortable. That is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Liz. Christina says for ongoing handouts designed with things participants can do before or after the live event. Wonderful. That's a great way to extend learning beyond a workshop. All right. Sarah says connective. I try to elicit shared laughter. Love that. Early in the session because I think there's something powerful about joy. Yes, it could definitely set up great tone for the session too. And I'm seeing some other people agreeing with the role that humor can play in sessions. And I actually talk about that in one of the chapters of my book as well. And I'll pause in case anyone else is still mid-type or mid-hand raise if you'd like to share by unmuting. All right, my fellow Tolu, active. Let me scroll up a little bit. Let's see. During my workshop, I prefer to use Mentimeter or Kahoot to engage with the cohort. Additionally, my audience are usually Arabic English speakers, so I try to offer translations as much as possible. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Tolu. Okay, and Lindsay also does the engagement slide too. Wonderful. Jan, responsive. I send a past workshop message of resources and encouragement the evening before the workshop and then 2 weeks later. That's a really great way to prompt people to think about what they learned during the session again after the fact. Thanks for that, Jan. Relevant from Deb. Building time throughout the year to connect with faculty stakeholders and units so that I can make note of where the challenges were shared and how they hope to connect to the current and how they connect to the current workshop. Fantastic. Lens, relevant. This really resonates with me, especially in times of organizational culture. Yes. And yeah, that's a context piece that I talk about in chapter 2, or chapter 1, rather. Nancy, structured, providing guided notes, high level order of topics, places to take specific notes for each section, previews of what's ahead. Wonderful. These are lots of really great ideas. I'll be sharing the chat with you after the session as well. So you can come back through and steal some nuggets from other people. And Louis just added one, structured. I think a well-structured workshop is important to building trust. Love that. Thank you all so much for sharing. And you know what? This feels like a really good time for our first giveaway. So you can either scan the QR code that is there on the slide, or you can click on the link that I'm about to share in the chat. And this first giveaway will be for a copy of my book, Designing and Facilitating Workshops with Intentionality. I'm actually going to draw 2 names for this drawing. So if you would like to enter the drawing, go ahead and click on that link or scan the QR code. All you need to do is enter your name, and then I'm going to do a random draw for our winner. So I'll pause and give you a few seconds to enter if you wish. All right, has everyone who wishes to enter entered? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up my spreadsheet and my name picker. I'm going to take these names. And by the way, if you didn't know, Padlet now has a name picker tool along with lots of other tools. So this is like a lot of fun for me to, to use. All right, let's see. Pick a name. All right, our first winner is Jan. Congrats, Jan. I'm writing your name down, so I'll follow up with you via email afterwards. And let's pick our next person. And some of you already ordered it, so that's why I was just like, don't worry, they're not aren't just book giveaways too. There's other ones too. All right. Second person, Tolu. Congratulations. So congratulations to both of you. And I will once again email you after the session to be in touch about how you can get your copy. All right. So let's go ahead and move on. And we're going to address our second question. So what? Why might you be interested in this book? How might it support you in the work that you're already doing? So first of all, I just want to say that this book is really great for anyone who designs and facilitates workshops as part of their role. And this would include people who are educational developers, faculty developers, instructional designers, academic technology specialists, teaching consultants, librarians, faculty peer mentors, educational consultants, and others. So basically, if this is part of your role in some capacity, I think this could be a really great resource. And then along with that, if you're not even working in higher ed specifically, I would say that this could still be applied in other contexts. So K-12, corporate, nonprofit, and Liz just added in the chat, but also educators. Yes. So I did write it with the mindset of people who are doing this as part of their job. But if you are an educator who facilitates workshops at conferences, you'll definitely get some really helpful tips that you can add to your toolkit from this book. And then I want to highlight a few of the special features that you'll find. One of them, and I'm really, really excited about this, is there are interviews with other facilitators. So I wanted to make sure that you're not just hearing my voice in the book, but really hearing other perspectives. And so I interviewed 7 amazing people, which included Karen Costa, Norman Ang, Tasha Souza, Courtney Plotz, Lindsay Maslin, who's here today, Todd Zakryzik, and Maha Bailey. And so you can find these interviews in chapter 10, Distinctive, where you actually get to read other people's stories of how they approach this work. And then through their stories, you'll get to hear different perspectives and approaches to workshop design and facilitation and glean even more ideas that you can apply to your work. Along with that, the book offers dozens of practical strategies, activities, and examples. So much of what you read, you'll be able to apply the very next day. And I saw some love in the chat earlier for Priya Parker. So I do also make connections to some popular facilitation frameworks and tools, including Priya Parker's The Art of Gathering, and then also the Liberating Structures activities. And so you'll be able to read examples of how you can apply these frameworks within the context of professional learning workshops. Okay, Lindsay has those books on her desk. Oh, under I have so many facilitation books now. I'm like developing a collection because there's so many great things out there that I realized through writing this book. So I've got lots of recommendations if people want additional books to read. So along with that, in the book, I include different planning and reflection templates in case that might be of use to people as they're designing and facilitating workshops. So there are templates for workshop design, templates for reflecting on the relevance components, templates for reflecting on how you bring who you are to your workshop design and facilitation work. And then each chapter ends with a few different things that you'll see, and this is consistent throughout the book. So first of all, every chapter ends with a sticky note reflection where you'll be prompted to reflect on a little sticky note that's in the book because we know facilitators love sticky notes, right? But not only is it encouraging you to reflect on on the reading, but also encouraging you to think about how you could take those prompts and maybe apply that in a different context. Each chapter also ends with a workshop toolkit. So you'll find a QR code and a link that you can scan or type in order to access a Google Doc. And the Google Doc is full of additional resources related to the chapter. So I curated all the things that I was coming across, things that I thought would be helpful for each chapter, all in the dedicated toolkit for each chapter. And I will be updating the document as I come across additional things moving forward. So it'll be a living document. Along with that, each chapter ends with the facilitator's lounge. So I wanted to make sure that sociality, which is one of Josh Eiler's themes of, learning from each other, was built into the design of the book as well. So every chapter ends with a QR code and a link that will take you to a facilitator's lounge, which is basically a dedicated web page where you can engage with other readers by posting questions or comments and interacting with each other too. All right, so been talking for a bit. I'm going to pause again. And this feels like a good time for a second giveaway. This time, it's going to be for a mug that has the workshop wheel model on it. And so if you would like to enter this giveaway, I'm going to post this link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code on the slide. And I'll pause and give you a moment to submit your name if you wish. All right, anyone need more time or we're good to go? Oh, sorry. Sorry if I didn't explain the great giveaways. So I'm doing 4 giveaways, each for different things. And you can enter each giveaway, but you can only win once. Yeah, sorry. All right, let me go ahead and pull up the spreadsheet here and our name picker. Liz, I love the ooze in your next to your name. Okay, so let's copy. Okay, my family is here. I'm not including you in this. I will just send you a mug. So my sister and my mom, sorry, I love you, but I want to make sure this goes to other people. Okay, let me go ahead and paste that there. And we'll go ahead and generate. Liz, I think your ooze worked. All right, Liz is the winner of the mug. I will be in touch after our session for how you can get it. Now there's going to be like oohs and ahs and all sorts of things for all of the other giveaways. So love that. All right, let me go ahead and close that. And we'll come back here. All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to pause between our what and now what for some Q&A time. And so what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to stop sharing my screen so it's a little bit easier to see everyone. And when I stop sharing my screen, I suggest that you switch your view in Zoom to speaker view, and you'll see why in a moment. So to do that, you'll click on view in the top right corner of Zoom, and then you'll change it to speaker. All right. And for our Q&A time, I'm going to start by addressing a few of the questions that were submitted during the registration form, but then we'll also have space for any other questions that you would like to ask live. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And this would be a good time, once again, if you want to switch the speaker view, that you can do that. And I'm going to bring up the first question. All right. So one of the questions, let me switch the speaker view on my other device here. There we go. All right. So one of the questions that was asked in the pre-registration form was, how did you do it? I'm writing my dissertation and need all the tips. Where do you or did you find the time to create such an amazing resource? So thank you for that. I will first say I need to probably offer a little bit of insight in terms of my positionality, that I don't have any caretaking responsibilities right now. So that made it so that I had a lot of time to be able to focus on this. And so I started by participating in the NCFDD, National Council for Faculty Development and Diversity. I think that's what it is. They do a 14-day writing challenge pretty much every summer and fall. And so once I realized, like, yes, I wanted to write this book, I started by signing up for that free 14-day writing challenge. And that helped me to get into a regular rhythm of writing, because I'm someone that likes streaks. And I was like, I don't want to break my streak. So I started, I did the 14-day writing streak. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this. So that was one thing I did. And then I also would wake up early in the morning before I officially started work and get some writing in before, because I started the opposite way of trying to write after work. And I was just, yeah, I had no energy then. So waking up early in the morning to get some writing before work started. And then on the weekends, I would do marathon writing sprints. So yeah, I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. All right, let me go ahead and bring up the second question. And this question is, when did you identify that the practices you were utilizing when facilitating workshops were connecting with faculty? Did you immediately lean into those methods and expand upon them? Yeah, so I would say that the main way that I realized things were working was through the feedback that I was getting from faculty. Like I would see similar themes in terms of, oh, I felt nervous about using this tech tool, but now I know how to do it. Or I wasn't sure how to go about this, and now I feel confident with it. Or I'm excited to do this, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be excited before. So those types of comments I think were really helpful in knowing that things were resonating with faculty. Another thing is seeing people follow up for like pedagogical consultations after the fact. I was like, okay, clearly people want to know more. So that is always a good sign that people are like, can we meet? And there are a few people that I now meet with on a pretty regular basis. And it's not always to necessarily talk about a teaching issue, but just to reflect on practice, to brainstorm ideas together, different things like that. And yeah, I would say as I'm realizing what's kind of working for the people I'm working with, I'm definitely trying to do more of that moving forward. Great question. Okay, question 3. How might we, as educational developers, effectively share the tools and ideas from this book with faculty and help them apply these concepts to better engage students in the classroom? All right, so for this one, I think that modeling goes a really long way. Like when you're sitting in a session that's well facilitated and you experience that connection, you experience that warmth, you experience the benefits of active learning, I think that helps to be like, okay, this is valuable and I want to do this in my own practice. So I think modeling is really important. I also think that having meta conversations about what you're doing and why you're doing can be really helpful for unpacking like the rationale behind the choices that you're making, because that can also help instructors to think about like what types of things might I think about when I'm designing or facilitating a class session. So those are 2 things I would say for that. I feel like I had another idea. Oh, and I would also say that I wrote this book with an educator mindset. Like I said, I've been doing this work for about 20 years now, mostly in the classroom and now in educational development. And so I think the ideas in this book could also be shared with educators and actually having them read and discuss, how might you use these practices in your own work. Okay, and I'm going to bring up one more pre-submitted question because I want to make sure you all who are here also have a chance to ask questions. Let's see. What was a key takeaway? What was the most impactful chapter? So, my key takeaway is that there are so many different ways to approach this work, and I love that. Like I get so excited when I get to design something. It's like a creativity aspect, and now knowing that there's so many other books and podcasts and resources that it can help me to do that even better is really, really exciting. Um, the most impactful chapter, I'm going to say it's the one that where I put other people's voices first. So chapter 10, distinctive, where I got to interview those 7 people and highlight the amazing work that they're doing. That's something that I think was really helpful and impactful. Okay, so I have done some of the pre-submitted questions, but I also want to create space for you all to share your questions too. And if you'd like, you can switch back to gallery view so that you can see other people. So that would be view in the top right corner and then selecting gallery. And if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can either post them in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to unmute. Yeah, Christina.
I was so ready. Um, so I'm wondering if there is a facilitation format that you really like, but you feel is underused, because I feel like in educational development, we get into this habit of calling every sort of active format a workshop. And I'm starting to suspect that there may be other formats that we should consider or label them a little differently.
I love that question. And that was actually some really helpful feedback that I got in the peer review stage was like, unpack what a workshop is, because we kind of call everything a workshop. And I was like, yep, we do. And so I think in chapter 1, yeah, I have a section. I provide like a working definition of a workshop. And I can't remember it verbatim right now, but I talk about how it needs to have multi-directional learning opportunities. So it's not just we're sitting in the room listening to someone at the front, but like everyone can actually learn from each other in some way, that it needs to be active. What was the other one? That it's a structured experience. So it's designed by a facilitator for a particular purpose in order to accomplish a specific goal. So it's a working definition. It's not, my own ideas, but I think that can help in just kind of distinguishing, like, is this a presentation where we're just giving information, or is this a workshop where we're actually having participants do work during the session? And I also include ideas for other types of things people can do. So basically, I said something to the effect of, here's what I think a workshop is. Here are some things that workshops are good for. So if you're having discussions, if you're having people do work, if you're having to do all of this, but if it's not that, here are some other ideas for what you can do instead. So, I'm seeing more people at centers for teaching and learning that are doing things like creating newsletters or podcasts or asynchronous email challenges. That's something I really want to try. Christina, I think it's Christina Catapodis, does like every fall she does a syllabus challenge, a 10-day syllabus challenge where she sends an email to people and there's a specific task for them to do and a video. And I love that idea because it also engages people who can't be there, during that specific workshop time. So lots of different possibilities for what we can do. Thanks for that, Christina. Great question. Yeah, the syllabus challenge is fantastic. I also signed up for it, even though technically I'm not teaching right now. Yeah, Michael.
Hi, Tolu. I've been in several workshops with you, and I've identified that you are excellent at connecting with people when you do workshops. My
Thank you.
question to you is how important is it to create that authentic connection with faculty prior to their technology adoption?
So the queen of authenticity is in the room, Liz Norell. So Liz wrote a book called The Present Professor, which is all about being your authentic self and bringing who you are to your work. I'm not going to put her on the spot right now, but highly recommend checking out her book. But I just wanted to, I guess, plus one what you just said about the importance of being authentic, whatever that might mean to you. Something I talked about in the book is that I think sometimes there's a pressure to feel like we have to do this work the way other people do it. And I felt that myself too, where I'm like, I don't do what other people do. Is that okay? Like, am I allowed to be a little goofy, a little, I laugh a lot, is that okay? And what I found is that that uniqueness, whatever that might be, is actually what helps people connect with you. Like when they see you as a real human being, when you're being your authentic self, um, of course, within reason, like we don't want to necessarily overshare anything, but I think that definitely helps in people feeling connected. And also, I think our vulnerability and our modeling can also help in people feeling connected to us. So, something I talk about in the book is, if there are places where you can actually share about related challenges you face with the workshop topic or things that you've been learning and growing and doing, that can help people to also feel a greater sense of trust and connection with you too. Yeah. Yeah, Lens. Oh, I think you might be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. Olu, this has been fantastic. What I'm
Oh,
curious
thank you.
about is what strategies have you seen work well in terms of after your workshops are completed to sustain the impact of your work and the lessons learned?
Great question. So there are a few different things that I do. One is whenever I'm facilitating a workshop, I always create some sort of resource for participants to go back to after the fact. I typically create a Wakelet collection. Wakelet is like Padlet, where you can collect lots of different resources, but I prefer it over Padlet for like collections of things versus like interactions. So that's what I use for sharing resources with participants. I also send a follow-up email that has like the recording if it's a virtual workshop. I have a pedagogical consultation menu, which is a handout that has like 10 different ways I can partner with you after this workshop. Like we can do co-planning. We can talk about assessment. Like, so it gives them ideas of like, here are some ways that I can partner with you in this work, because sometimes that's not always apparent to instructors. Like they might think, oh, they just do workshop. And it's like, no, no, no. We can chat after the fact. Like we can have a conversation. And then one thing that I did recently that I found really helpful and that I want to do more of moving forward is I incorporated a certificate into the workshop. So I did a two-part workshop series about classroom assessment techniques. And I basically told instructors that they could earn a certificate for showing evidence of implementing at least two of the strategies that we talked about, because that's the ultimate goal is we want them to do something with the thing. And I also told them that if they earned a certificate, they would be entered into a drawing for a copy of the book. And so that was a fantastic experience. I loved reading their reflections on like, here's what I tried, here's what worked, here's what didn't. I'm really excited to do this moving forward, all of those sorts of things. And so that was really helpful in, yeah, helping people to actually do something with the material. All right, I think we have time for one more question. So I'll pause and see if there is another question before we proceed. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to share my screen again. And we are going to move on to our next giveaway. All right. So this giveaway is going to be for a tote bag that has the workshop wheel model. So once again, you can scan the QR code on the slide or click on the link in the chat. Okay, there's some love for the tote. Remember, if you've already won, unfortunately, you cannot enter again, but I'll pause and give you a moment. All right, has everyone who wishes to enter the tote giveaway submitted? Okay, let me go ahead and pull that up. Alrighty. All right, let's see. All right, Michael Sanchez, you won the tote bag. All right, I'll be in touch after the session for how you can get that. And let's go back over here. And we're going to do our last question, which is now what? What are some ways that you could potentially support the book in your own work? So, of course, one of the ways would be to order a copy if you wish for yourself or for a friend. You can find the book at pretty much all major book retailers, and it will. Oh, some of you already have it. Michael's got a copy. And yeah, I think people who order directly from Routledge got the book earlier. If you order from other people, it may not come until next week or the week after. But you can either scan the QR code on the slide or click on the link that I'm about to share in the chat, and that will take you to the pre-order page where you can find all of the different places that you can order the book. And along with that, if you pre-order the book and you go to that site, there's a form on the site where you can submit either proof of purchase or proof of library request. And then that will give you access to the workshop wheel sketch note that you can keep for future reference. So just wanted to let you know, if you've already pre-ordered and you didn't know about that, you can just go to this page, and down here in this green form is where you can enter, and then you'll get immediate access to the sketch note. And then some other ways that you can help is by spreading the word. So if you use Goodreads, you can mark the book as want to read or currently reading there. That helps other people to know that the book is a thing. You can also post about the book on social media as you're reading it. And I have a hashtag for the book, which is the workshop wheel. You can schedule a reminder to your future self to write a review, because reviews are really helpful in getting the word out there. And then if you wish, you could also host a book discussion group. So whatever you'd like to do, I'm all ears. I welcome that. All right, and we're going to do our final giveaway. This one is for a notebook. Once again, you can scan the QR code on the slide or click on the link that I just shared in the chat. All right, everyone in? Last one. Let's see who's going to get this one. Let me go ahead and close this window first. All righty. Fingers crossed. All right, last one. Michael, other Michael, Michael McCreary. Congrats, Mike. All right, I've got your name down. I'll be in touch after the session. Congratulations to everyone. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up our time together. So first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has supported me throughout this journey. It would not have been possible to write this book on my own. And there are lots of people I wish to thank, so I'm just going to quickly say their first names. So thank you to Diane, P, Shari, Derek, Janae, Kevin, Lillian, Bonnie, Mandy, Rudy, Komoto, Tom, Caitlin, Karen, Norman, Tasha, Courtney, Lindsay, Todd, Maha, Christina, Michael, my mom, my sisters, Yolande and Olamide, and you for being here today and supporting this work. It means so much to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're going to close with an activity called Group Anthem. And so I invite you to share a closing thought that begins with one of these lines, either I am, and I'll type these in the chat, I believe, or I will. And so you can either share in the chat or you can unmute if you prefer to do so. All right, see in the chat, Liz, I believe in hope. My mom, I will read the book. Thanks, Mom. Nancy, I'll order this book in a few minutes. Christina, I'll get a much needed refresh on the many ways to facilitate learning. Yeah, and that's what I love about this is there's so many ideas out there, and I'm going to continue reading books too to find out how I can continue to expand my scope of skills too. Justin, I'll be reading and leaving a review. Thanks, Justin. Jan, I'm appreciative of your work, warmth, and welcoming us today. Such a great, informative, and fun session. Thanks, Jan. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. Michael, I believe. Oh, thanks, Michael. I feel weird like reading out like you're awesome, but that's so, that's why I paused there. But thank you so much, Michael. My mom's proud of me. Okay, I'll be saving the chat and looking at all of these things closely. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You all are amazing. And as we close, I just want to say thank you all once again and happy reading. I will hang out here for a few minutes in case anyone wants to continue chatting, and I'll stop the recording in a bit. But thank you, thank you, thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting, and have an amazing summer.